Hey, builders. Welcome to Office Hours, May 1st, 2025. Happy May. Spring is here. I started out with builders there because jokingly, last office hours, I made the comment that I'm no longer going to call our customers customers. I'm going to call them builders because that's what they are. They're helping us, they're developing within Buildable. You guys are, helping us drive the product to where it needs to be. And then I went back and watched the recording last week, and after I said that throughout the recording, I used the word customers multiple times. So it's gonna take some changing on my part, but I'm gonna work on it. So builders. That's I gotta ingrain that in my brain, so I'm no longer using customers going forward because customers just truly does not speak to what you all are, the community that's helping drive this product and using this product, using Buildable, that is. So anyway, today I am going to cover some product updates, maybe a few updates from the previous office hours. We just put out a new release yesterday. It was actually a batch of releases together, and I sent out an email to the builder community. So we'll cover those, and then we are going to jump back into our employee repository app that we've been working on for the last two office hours. Today, we're actually going to add another table in that is going to be for tracking salaries and annual raises. And I actually, prior to this office hours, created a spreadsheet of some data that we're going to import into the system. So you'll see importing into the system. We did that before when we initially created the employee repository, but the one modification we're going to be doing today is we're going to be importing into this new salaries table that we create and actually importing it in so it links the salaries to the actual employees in the other employees table. This will all make sense when we're kind of starting it out, but that's going to be one addition that we're going to be doing in the import today. Now, part of this, the reason that I want to add this table in is because I will actually not be hosting next week's office hours. That'll be May 8th. Our product manager, George Hambel, will be running next week's office hours, and he is actually going to use the same employee repository app that we've created, and he's going to build a couple reports in there using the data that we actually import into the system today. So he'll probably create a report that's got a trend line of like salary year over year for your entire company to see like how that how that those increases or decreases are occurring. And I added an additional field, which we'll see today, but I added a new field on the employees table of what role the employee has. So I just added in three roles, admin, executive, and developer, and kind of segmented each of the employees by those roles. He'll probably also create a pie chart next week that shows you the salary breakdowns based on the roles of employees that you have in the system. And then after he creates those reports, he'll be building a dashboard in the system. So when you come into the employee repository, you don't see just the text dashboard. You'll actually see these reports that he creates on it so that you can track that. So I'm going to add in that new table today, import in that data, and then George will be further working on this in the next office hours to build those reports and dashboards. So then you can see how an app fully comes to life. Not only do you have your data in there, can you add data into it, but you can actually report on that data in the system. After that office hours, we're going to have a new session starting the following week, which should be the May 15th. That'll be where we're going to dive into our CRM that we are implementing, our template CRM that each account can grab and just pull into their tenant, their account, and start using a CRM that we've pre-built. We're going to start talking about that and seeing how that can be used and giving kind of preview of what that CRM looks like. So that'll be the next couple office hours. So for the next 2 weeks, the employee repository, and then we'll jump into the CRM the week after that. So before we dive into actually doing the employee repository, let's talk over our release notes. So I wanted to start out here today on the Buildable website kind of for two reasons. One reason was our office hours, these sessions that we're having today, we have this link on our website that you can click to go to office hours. This talks a little bit about what's going on with office hours. If you click this link right here, that's to join this Teams meeting that we're in right now, that we're recording, and any customer can join and ask questions, give feedback, whatever. That's a standing meeting that we run every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, which we're running right now. And then if you want to see any of the other sessions, you can come here and click on, I'll open it up in a new tab, but click on View All Sessions. And this has all of our previous office hours on YouTube. So you can access them here. They're up there on our YouTube. We also have some other videos on our YouTube channel, and we're going to further build out our YouTube channel there. The other reason why I wanted to start off on the Buildable page was the Buildable website is for our knowledge base. So just to make everyone aware, we have a link to our knowledge base here on the website. If you click on that, that takes you to our Doc 360 that has all of our information. And whenever we do releases like we did this week, we send out an email to our community with the release notes. We also post on social media, and we also post those release notes here in our knowledge base. So as of yesterday, we did this release. The release covered 4.5.46 all the way up to 4.5.51. And these are, some of the things that we did. So for instance, we had a few errors with date ranges especially when you were in grid edit mode. So we updated those so that, you didn't have the issues with the errors. Sometimes when you opened up a record in Buildable, that would be like a singular record, like in our employee repository. If you opened up an employee, it would flash the record ID, which is the unique identifier for that record in the system, kind of like a social security number that a person would have. Each person has a unique social security number. Each record in Buildable that you create has a unique identifier for it. So it would flash that briefly, and then it would show you the regular record title. That no longer does that. It now shows the record title. We sometimes, an error may occur in the system. We added a take me to home button, so that will actually take you to your home and get you out of that error if an error ever occurs. We had some issues in the calendar view with certain headings being cut off, so we fixed that, and we also fixed a flashing issue on the calendar as well. The form builder sidebar. So actually, I'll show this real quick. The form builder sidebar, let's go back into, so let's jump into our employee repository real quick. I'm having trouble saying employee repository today. But before, when you went into the form builder to modify this form, this sidebar would go away, and then the form builder sidebar would appear over here. Now we've changed that so that the sidebar over here just gets replaced with the form builder sidebar. That way it's staying consistent, that you're working from left to right, and you're not, one sidebar is closing over here and a new one's opening on the other side. We're doing the same thing with our dashboards as well. So you now have the customization, in this form, in the form builder with the sidebar on the left-hand side. Let me go back to these. You can see my cool background. Big Lord of the Rings fan. So we form help text. We actually updated that as well. So maybe I should show that off as well. So if you have help text, I actually didn't add any into these fields, but let's add some help text real quick. That would be help text for these individual fields. So let's go into one of these fields real quick, just employee name, edit the field, and we're gonna add some helper text. So this is the full employee name, and we'll save that. Now, if we go back to employees and we hover over that, see how that pops up now and says this is the full employee name. Before we had helper text appearing below, and sometimes it was cut off and it wasn't looking right. So now if you put helper text in your fields, it will appear when you hover over that field. These other fields don't have any helper text, but that one does. So that's that update right there. We also fixed an issue with selecting a start date and date ranges. That's now fixed. The sidebar that I just mentioned from the form builder, that it's on the left-hand side, that now is the same on the dashboard builder as well. So we're trying to keep everything consistent on the left-hand side, working left to right. Sometimes fields would temporarily disappear when you went in the manage fields modal or did a few other things. We resolved that. And then we added in, this is not such a big deal, but now when you share links to your workspace, it will have the workspace ID in that link. So, that's one addition that doesn't really, affect too much, but that's a new recent update. So we're working on a bunch of other updates now. We're getting into our AI builder. We're going to be releasing the API and the AI builders here in the near future, and we're kind of talking over some of that, but that'll be coming in the very near future. But this is a big release, and I'm sure we'll be doing another push next week. So let's jump into the employee repository now, and let's go through and do kind of what I discussed there at the top of this call. So first thing, before we actually dive in and start adding any tables or anything, I mentioned that I added a new role field here. So I added a role field, made it a single select field, and I colorized it, admin blue, executive green, developer red. And then I went through and just randomly selected for these template employees that we have in the system, different roles for them. So I did just want to show that. I also wanted to show before we actually went into development, kind of some of our reporting. George is going to go into the charts and dashboards next week, but I thought it would be cool to show, some basic reporting modifications that you can do in the system here. So as an example, since I did just add these roles, and there's 3 different roles in the system, doesn't matter how many there are, but I added in 3. When I come to this table, they're still, the employees are still listed in various roles and kind of out of order and stuff like that. If you have a field like this, you can, in Buildaible, click on this group right here. And in this case, I'm going to say I want to group them by role. So now you can see developers shown up here as a top level row, and then all the developers are shown beneath that. And I'm going to hit save grouping here. So that grouping is now saved. So now all of my developers are now listed under this one row of developer here. And I can collapse the space if I want to, and those kind of collapse under that row. If I scroll down, you'll see it's the same admin. So there's 18 records or 18 employees in here that that are under the admin role, and then there are 9 under the executive. And again, I can collapse all of these and have those collapsed, and then open them when I want to see the people in those roles. And now, now that I've gone out of this and I come back, it is still grouped like that because when I grouped, I saved that grouping. If you don't want that to be the main view when you come to this table, you can actually go back into here, uncheck that role, hit save grouping, and now it's back to how it was before. But I just wanted to show off that one little unique feature there of how you could actually group your records based on a certain field in the system, and they would stay grouped going forward. So one thing that we're gonna go through actually and build the table to track starting salaries for employees and kind of annual raises. So this is a continuation of our employee repository. And prior to this call, just to show, I created this spreadsheet right here. Now the spreadsheet has our employee names in the system. I put in a type of starting salary, the date that they received that, and then what their starting salary was. And I started it out in 2024, so that way we could do some raises as well. So if you see right down here, quintilla, which starts up at the top, starts another row down here, and I put in a type of annual raise. The date was January 1st, 2025, and then I put in kind of an annual raise for each one of these employees there. So we are going to import this data in after we create this table. We're going to then look at how you can see these records of salaries, starting salaries, and the annual raises underneath of each of the employees. And then that's going to be the completion of our session today. George is then going to take this next week, and he's going to build the reports and charts and dashboards based off of this data that we create in the system here. So we need to create a new table now for salaries or adjustments or whatever we want to call it. We'll call it compensation, just for context. So we're going to create a compensation table. We are going to have to create a link a record field because we're going to have to link this to the employees. So we've done that in the previous sessions, but we'll do it again today. We are going to create a drop-down field that has the choices of starting salary, annual raise, and you could put other things in it like bonuses and things like that, but we'll just start it out with starting salary and annual raise. We will need to create a date field on this table to know when this raise or starting salary occurred. And then we will need to create an amount field. So how much, they are receiving. There's one other field we're gonna create that's not on the spreadsheet, but basically that's part of this relationship that we will create when we link it to the employees. We basically are going to want to also have on this table what role that employee is. So the roles we just talked about with developer, admin, executive, we're going to want to have the role on this table. And the reason that we're going to do that, we're actually going to do this to help George out a little bit for next week's session, because that way, when he wants to create a pie chart that breaks down, the salaries based on roles, he'll need that roles table, or roles field rather, on this compensation table to be able to build that report. So we're going to add that field in as well. So this will all make sense as we do it, but let's go ahead and first off, we're going to create the table and then we'll start creating these fields. The first fields we'll create will be these ones right here, and then we'll create the link a record field to link to the employee name, and the lookup field that we've created in previous sessions to look up to the role of that employee. So let me go ahead and close this down, and then we'll import this data in. So we're in the employee repository now. Let's go ahead and create our compensation table. So to do that, hit the plus sign here, and we'll call this compensation. Call it compensation records. And this will be called a compensation record. Create it, and then it should pop up for me to then add my first field in the system, because that's one thing we implemented last week. So looking at my spreadsheet, the first one I'm going to need is going to be a type field. So what type of compensation is this? So we are going to select single select. And the first one we're going to put in is going to be option we're going to put in as starting salary. And this obviously is going to be a required field. And we'll make this green. Then we're just going to add one other option. It's going to be annual raise. Make that blue. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here because I want to then create another field, which is going to be the date. So let's hit the plus. That'll add that type field, and that'll take me into creating a new field. So in this case, we'll select date. This is obviously required. And then we'll hit the plus sign because we want to now create an amount field. We're going to give it a name. So date plus. And now we want to do a numeric field in this case, and we'll call this amount. The field prefix in this case is going to be a $sign. And the number formatting is going to be that, and we'll leave the decimal places set at 2. So now we're going to hit the plus because now we've created the type, date, and amount. So now we want to be able to select an employee. So we want to be able to link it to one of the employees. So next we're going to create a link a record field. So in that case, we'll call it employee name and select link a record. Then what table do we want to link it from? We want to link it from the employees, not the interactions. And then what field do we want to look up? We want to look up the employee name. All that's saying is for me to choose an employee in this dropdown, what piece of information do I want to select to choose that employee? In this case, we want to choose their name. That's the easiest way for us to choose. If I put date of birth in there, I'd have to memorize all my employees' date of birth to know which employee I'm choosing. So employee name is the one that works the best. Lastly, I'm going to hit the plus sign one more time here, because now when I choose one of those employees, I want it to automatically pull down what role that employee is. So I am now going to select a lookup field, and I'm going to call that employee role and select lookup. And what primary field do I want to key off of? That's going to be the employee name that I just previously created. And then what field do I want to look up from that table? I want to look up the role. So now we'll hit done. So now we've created all of our fields. If we look at it, we have type, date, amount, employee name, and employee role. Now, if I'm on this table and I want to see the data on this table, I probably want to see the employee name and the employee role first. So before I do anything else, I'm going to hit Manage Fields here. And I'm going to drag the employee name up. I'm going to drag the employee role up above type and hit Save Changes. So now the table is laid out with employee name, employee role, type, date, amount. Just make these columns a little smaller. That's one thing we implemented recently. Like if you make these columns smaller, it will stay that size after you've done that. So I'll make those smaller. Okay, so we're going to import some data in, but if I were to just hit new compensation record here, you can see how the table's laid out. And again, if I choose Benny here, it's going to pull down Benny's role as an executive. If I choose crazy names we got in here, but if I choose Clary is an admin. So that's how the link a record field right here works and how the lookup field works. Now, before going further and importing the data in, let's make this form a little prettier. So let me hit this down arrow here and click Edit Form. I'll discard my changes because I don't want to save anything. So I think I want the employee name probably to be up here at the top. Maybe their role to be right up next to it. And actually, take that back. I probably want the date to be the first field. So let me move the date up here. Move the employee name, employee role over. And then I can move the type field. Basically, we don't have too many fields, so these could all just be on one row. So I'll just make them all on one row for now. And reduce the size of this section a little bit. I'll go ahead and save. There we go. So now that is how our form is laid out. One thing to kind of mention here, you notice these are a little off on their formatting. That's something we're working to resolve right now. We believe it actually has to do with this required asterisk right here is pushing them down. If you remove the required, it aligns them perfectly. So we're working to resolve that right now. So that'll be resolved shortly. Okay, so that is our table. Now, obviously, I can go in here and just start manually entering this data in the system. But since I have the data here in a spreadsheet, I'm going to import it in instead. And before we actually even do that, let's go back to our employees. Let's open up the first one here, so Quintella. So you'll notice we have our interactions down here that we built last week, and that's linked. But now that we've built our compensation records table and we've linked it to the employees, there's a tab down here for compensation records that you can now click on to see that information. Obviously, we don't have any information in the system currently, but that's once we import in, you'll be able to see that data in here. So let's go back to the compensation records, and we're going to hit this down arrow right here and hit import data. And now I'm going to go ahead and choose that file from my desktop and drop it in. So now that has come in. This first column was an ID column. That was the ID of the employees, the record ID. I don't really need to import that in, so I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to choose a field that I want that to go into. The first row of my data did have the column headers. So I'm going to click this link, this checkbox right here that says ignore first row because I don't want to import in ID, employee name, type, date, etc. So I click that, that removes that first row. So now we're just looking at the actual data. So this column here, I am going to import into employee name. This column here, I am going to import into the type field. This column here, I'm going to import into the date field. In this column here, I will import into the amount field. Notice we don't have the role field to choose on our import. The reason we don't have the role field to choose is because that's a lookup field. That's read only on this table. You can't put any data into that. That solely pulls from which employee is chosen in this employee name field. So you won't be able to import into lookup fields like that. That has to be based off the link a record field that lookup field keys off of. So now this all looks good. We're not updating any existing records because these are brand new records going to this table. So let's go ahead and just hit import, see how this works. Ooh, found a bug, cool. So looks like it imported the data in correctly. The only issue is it cut off some data here. So that was a good catch right there. So I imagine that's doing that because these commas, so we'll get that resolved. But let me go ahead and format these cells to be a number. Let's see, just like that. Okay, so that they don't have commas. So that's a good catch. I'll send that over to our developers. We'll get that resolved shortly. So let me go ahead and just delete these records. So you can delete all of them right there in one shot. And let me save this file, this Excel file. We'll re-import it in. See, we don't mind showing some of our little hiccups in Buildaible because, hey, we're being transparent and we're all about fixing them. And if you find them, we'd love to know. So I've now resaved this file without the commas. Let me jump in and hit import data again. Drop the file in. I'm going to ignore the first row. We're going to select the employee name, type, the date, and the amount, and hit import. Okay, there we go. So now the data's in there correctly. The dates are all coming through, it looks like correctly. Good to go. So the other cool thing about our numeric fields here is they always give you a total at the bottom and a average of them. So it looks like, you know, the total is kind of wonky in this because this is showing the initial starting salaries and the annual raises that went up, you know, to the new salary. So that total is showing totals, but it's totals based off of, you know, kind of duplicate effort on employees. But in this case, it is showing you your average salary as 54,390 out of all of these. So it's kind of cool that those do that. And negative values would show red. So let's go over to the employees table now and look at Quintilla as an example and see if this $50,000 starting salary and then this $55,000 annual raise is showing under that employee. So if it imported correctly and it linked it correctly to them, it should show. So let's jump over here. I'm going to close out Quintilla just for the heck of it, and we'll reopen. And we will click on the compensation. So there we go. So looking at Quintilla here, we can see the starting salary of $50,000 and then the annual raise of $55,000 there. So now those records are showing underneath of Quintilla just fine. And you can see that history. So you can see that chain of events there of, okay, 1/1/2024, Quintilla had 50,000. 1/1/2025, we gave Quintilla a raise to 55,000. So that is our building of a new table in the system, importing data in for the compensation, and then being able to link it correctly based on the import to the correct employee and showing it underneath of them. Again, next week, George, our product manager, will be running office hours, and he will take it a step further by building some reports based on the data in this table here, and then also building a dashboard in the system. So that will be today's office hours. Join us every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'd love to have you. We'd love to address any questions and keep, doing some of these demos of showing you the power of Buildaible. And please send feedback in. We'd love to hear it. Have a good one. Thanks.